Why is Europe begging for an alliance with Africa? You're mistaken if you think it's a genuine offer for alignment. After examining the historical background, it becomes clear that partnering with Europe implies granting them the right to exploit. Europe exploits no one more effectively than its partner. Therefore, when Africa was approached to join an alliance with Europe, it rejected the offer, declaring it had had enough. But will Europe quit its pleas? Let's find out. Africa is running away from Europe, even when Europe is now trying hard to stay connected. Africa says it's done with any alliance or partnership. However, we must know the historical background to understand why this is happening. So, what is the historical background of Europe's relationship with Africa, and how has colonialism shaped their complex history? Europe's historical relationship with Africa is deeply entangled with the legacy of colonialism. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, colonial powers from Europe sought to exploit Africa's vast resources, imposing their political, economic, and cultural dominance. The era of colonialism involved the forceful acquisition of territories, leading to the extraction of natural resources such as oil and gas to fuel European economies. This exploitation laid the foundation for a complex history marked by unequal power dynamics, as European nations viewed African nations not as equals, but as sources of wealth to be exploited. The scars of colonialism continue to influence the contemporary interactions between Europe and Africa. But what triggered Europe's recent attempt to ally with Africa? And what was the underlying motive behind this move? The recent attempt by Europe to ally with Africa was triggered by the shifting global power dynamics and the fear of losing influence in the continent. As Russia's influence grew and China made substantial inroads, Europe sought to maintain its foothold in Africa, recognizing its strategic importance. The President of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, made an unexpected offer of friendship during a meeting, seemingly acknowledging Africa's voice on climate change. However, a closer examination reveals a hidden agenda, an attempt to sustain Europe's grip on Africa's wealth. Despite the rhetoric of collaboration, there are doubts about the sincerity of Europe's intentions, with concerns raised about the continent's historical exploitation of Africa's resources. How has Africa responded to Europe's recent offer of friendship? A new generation of African leaders inspired by figures like Muammar Gaddafi, Thomas Sankara, and Patrice Lumumba has emerged to resist exploitation. Countries like Niger have taken concrete steps by revoking military cooperation agreements with the European Union, signaling a growing disapproval of Western nations, particularly France, due to neo-colonialism and human rights violations. The resistance reflects a shift in mindset among African nations as they assert their independence and stand against historical patterns of exploitation. Then comes the African Union to save Africa from exploitation. However, how does the African Union fit into the narrative, and what challenges does it face in dealing with external entities like Europe? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Launched in 2002, the African Union AU aimed to foster greater unity and solidarity among African nations. However, challenges persist in corruption, human rights abuses, and economic development. In the face of Europe's attempted alliance, the AU must reassess its approach, focusing on empowering African nations to shape their narrative rather than seeking assistance from external entities. The AU plays a crucial role in addressing the evolving dynamics between Africa and Europe, emphasizing the need for greater governance, democratic practices, and economic development to ensure Africa's voice is heard internationally. How is the ongoing global power shift affecting the relationship between Europe and Africa? As we have discussed, the historical background of Europe's relationship with Africa is deeply rooted in colonialism, trade, cultural exchanges, and political relations. European nations have historically viewed African nations not as equals or friends, but as sources of valuable resources to be exploited. Natural resources like oil and gas have been extracted to fuel European economies, creating a relationship characterized by exploitation. This history has shaped a complex narrative between the two continents, with Africa being subjected to historical exploitation that raises questions about the sincerity of contemporary alliances. The ongoing global power shift significantly affects the relationship between Europe and Africa. As the West faces the fear of losing influence in Africa, the continent's wealth becomes increasingly vital to maintaining power for Western nations. With Russia's influence rising and China's gaining ground, especially in the aftermath of the African Climate Change Summit in Nairobi, there is a heightened sense of competition for influence in the region. This global context adds complexity to Europe's attempts to forge alliances with Africa and underscores the strategic importance of the continent's resources in maintaining Western power dynamics. Europe's offer of friendship to Africa, as articulated by President Ursula von der Leyen during a meeting, comes against the backdrop of this global power shift. While acknowledging Africa's voice on climate change, her proposal reveals a hidden agenda focused on maintaining Europe's grip on Africa's wealth. But was this expected by the President of the European Union to make such an offer? During the meeting, the President of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, unexpectedly offered friendship to Africa. Acknowledging Africa's voice on climate change, she proposed a collaboration between Europe and Africa that could ostensibly benefit both continents. However, delving deeper into her words reveals a hidden agenda. Despite the seemingly generous proposal, there are indications that von der Leyen's primary objective is to maintain Europe's grip on Africa's wealth. The hidden agenda becomes apparent as her emphasis on collaboration to exploit Africa's natural surroundings and youthful workforce for Europe's benefit is scrutinized. While the offer is framed in terms of friendship and mutual benefit, there are lingering doubts about the sincerity of the proposed alliance. Von der Leyen's speech suggests that, beneath the surface, Europe is seeking to continue historical patterns of exploitation, using the pretext of collaboration for the extraction of Africa's valuable resources. We have discussed how Africa views Europe. Now let's discuss how Europe has historically viewed African nations. Historically, Europe has viewed African nations not as friends, but as resources to exploit. The historical relationship between Europe and Africa has been shaped by colonialism, wherein natural resources, including oil and gas, were extracted to fuel European economies. This perspective of Africa as a source of valuable resources has characterized the interactions between the two continents, establishing a historical exploitation that colors the narrative of their relationship. Ursula von der Leyen's offer during the meeting raises questions about Europe's intentions due to this historical context. While she proposed collaboration and friendship, the underlying skepticism emerges from Europe's historical exploitation of Africa's resources. With its vast resources and diverse nations, the continent may not inherently need assistance from nations with a history of exploiting its wealth. When examined in the context of this historical exploitation, the offer prompts inquiries about the sincerity and true motives behind Europe's apparent goodwill, suggesting that the proposed alliance may be driven by a quest to maintain control over Africa's valuable resources. Despite Ursula von der Leyen's speech's rhetoric of friendship and collaboration, there are implications that Europe's true objectives in the proposed alliance with Africa may diverge from the surface-level expressions of goodwill. Von der Leyen's emphasis on collaboration to exploit Africa's natural surroundings and youthful workforce for Europe's benefit raises doubts about the sincerity of the proposed alliance. Rather than a genuine commitment to mutual benefit, von der Leyen's speech suggests that Europe's primary objective is maintaining Africa as a source of inexpensive raw resources. The focus on harnessing Africa's resources and workforce, coupled with the historical exploitation of the continent, contributes to the skepticism regarding Europe's true intentions. Despite the outward appearance of friendship, the speech implies that the proposed alliance may serve as a strategic means for Europe to continue its historical patterns of resource extraction from Africa, potentially perpetuating a relationship characterized by unequal power dynamics and exploitation. Let's come back to the role of the African Union. How should it face the challenges that are obstructing its way to peacemaking in Africa? The AU aims to achieve greater unity and solidarity among African countries, positioning itself as a platform for collaborative decision-making and collective action. However, the AU faces significant challenges in realizing these objectives. The AU's role involves addressing issues such as corruption, human rights abuses, and economic development within the continent. It is a forum where African nations can collectively engage with global partners and shape their collective narrative. However, the AU encounters challenges in achieving greater unity and solidarity due to persistent issues within member countries, including corruption and human rights abuses. These challenges hinder the AU's ability to present a united front and fully empower African nations in their dealings with external entities. Implementing robust anti-corruption measures within the AU and member countries is crucial. The AU can establish an independent body to monitor and investigate corruption, promoting transparency and accountability. Encouraging member states to enact and enforce anti-corruption laws and fostering a culture of transparency and governance will contribute to reducing corruption. The AU should advocate for and enforce human rights standards across the continent. This can be achieved by establishing monitoring mechanisms to address human rights abuses. Providing training and resources to law enforcement agencies and the judiciary can strengthen their ability to uphold human rights and prosecute offenders. The AU can also collaborate with international organizations to share best practices and experiences in promoting and protecting human rights. The AU should prioritize economic development initiatives that empower African nations. This includes promoting sustainable development, investing in education and skills training, and fostering entrepreneurship. Creating a conducive business environment, attracting foreign investment, and supporting local industries can contribute to economic growth and job creation. The AU can work with member states to formulate policies prioritizing inclusive economic development. Investing in capacity building and education is crucial for empowering African nations. The AU can collaborate with member states to enhance educational systems, emphasizing skills development and innovation. Additionally, providing training programs for government officials, civil servants, and law enforcement agencies can strengthen institutional capacities, fostering good governance and effective administration. Promoting public awareness and civic engagement is essential for shaping an empowerment narrative. The AU can support initiatives that educate citizens about their rights, encourage civic participation, and create platforms for open dialogue between governments and their populations. Informed and engaged citizens play a vital role in holding governments accountable and shaping the direction of their nations. By taking comprehensive and targeted actions in these areas, the African Union can address internal challenges, empower member states, and shape a narrative of self-determination and progress for the continent. What lesson did Europe fail to align with Africa to teach Europe? The failed attempt of Europe to ally with Africa serves as a reminder of historical exploitation, primarily because it echoes a pattern where Africa has been historically viewed as a source of valuable resources rather than as an equal partner. Europe's historical exploitation of African nations for natural resources, such as oil and gas, has created a legacy of economic and power imbalances. The unsuccessful alliance attempt raises doubts about the sincerity of Europe's intentions, as it suggests a continuation of historical patterns of extracting Africa's wealth for its benefit. In the face of evolving global power dynamics, African nations are taking proactive steps to assert their independence and reshape their narrative. African nations are diversifying their partnerships and not overly relying on traditional Western alliances. Engaging with a broad range of nations, including those from Asia, the Middle East, and South America, can provide a more balanced and equitable approach to international relations. African nations are enhancing regional cooperation within the African Union. Collaborative efforts on economic, political, and security issues can foster a stronger continental identity and position Africa as a collective force in international affairs. Prioritizing economic empowerment through sustainable development initiatives and investment in key sectors such as technology, agriculture, and renewable energy can reduce dependence on external assistance. By developing self-sufficient economies, African nations assert greater control over their resources and destiny. African nations also advocate for fair trade practices and renegotiate economic agreements with external partners to ensure mutually beneficial outcomes. This involves challenging exploitative terms and promoting agreements, prioritizing equitable resource sharing and technology transfer. Encouraging African voices in international forums and media is essential. By actively participating in global conversations and shaping their narrative, African nations challenge stereotypes and present a more accurate and empowering image to the world. Then comes investing. Investing in education and innovation can empower African nations to ensure mutually beneficial outcomes. This involves challenging exploitative terms and promoting agreements prioritizing equitable resource sharing and technology transfer. Encouraging African voices in international forums and media is essential. By actively participating in global conversations and shaping their narrative, African nations challenge stereotypes and present a more accurate and empowering image to the world. Then comes investing. Investing in education and innovation can empower African nations to participate meaningfully in the knowledge economy. A skilled and innovative workforce can drive economic growth and position African countries as contributors to global advancements. By taking these steps, African nations are working towards breaking away from historical patterns of exploitation, asserting their independence, and navigating the evolving global power dynamics on their terms. But was rejecting the alliance offer really necessary? Why does Africa want to assert that it stands against Europe now? Or we should ask how Africa's future depends on its ability to shape its narrative and resist external influences seeking to exploit its resources? The future of Africa hinges on its ability to shape its narrative and resist external influences that seek to exploit its resources. This assertion is rooted in the historical context of exploitation and the contemporary challenges faced by the continent. Africa's ability to shape its narrative is crucial for dispelling historical stereotypes and presenting a more accurate and empowering image to the world. By actively participating in global conversations and asserting its unique perspectives, Africa can challenge preconceived notions and foster a more balanced understanding of its potential and contributions. The call to resist external influences seeking to exploit Africa's resources is a response to historical patterns of exploitation. By actively resisting and renegotiating exploitative agreements, African nations can retain greater control over their resources, ensuring that economic partnerships are based on fairness and mutual benefit. Africa's future depends on the African Union's and individual nations' proactive steps to strengthen governance, promote democratic practices, and foster economic development. These efforts are essential for reducing vulnerabilities to external exploitation and building self-sufficiency. Africa's ability to resist external influences contributes to its standing on the international stage. By asserting independence and promoting equitable partnerships, the continent can position itself as a respected global player rather than subject to neo-colonial practices or exploitative relationships. The future of Africa is closely tied to its economic self-determination. By diversifying economies, investing in key sectors, and promoting sustainable development, African nations can reduce dependency on external forces and chart their course toward prosperity. If Europe keeps exploiting, will Africa ever accept Europe's alliance request? What does Europe have to do to make Africa trust Europe? If Europe continues to exploit Africa, African nations will likely be hesitant to accept alliance requests. To build trust, Europe must demonstrate a genuine commitment to equitable partnerships, mutual benefit, and respect for African sovereignty. Europe should prioritize transparent and fair trade agreements that benefit both parties. Ensuring that economic partnerships are based on equitable resource sharing, fair market access, and just terms will demonstrate a commitment to mutual benefit. Facilitating technology transfer and investing in skill development within African nations can empower local industries. This approach fosters economic growth and reduces dependency on European expertise, contributing to a more balanced partnership. Europe can actively support sustainable development initiatives in Africa. Investing in renewable energy, agriculture, and infrastructure projects that align with environmental and social sustainability goals can showcase a commitment to long-term, responsible collaboration. Europe should respect the governance structures of African nations and avoid interference in internal affairs. Upholding principles of democracy and human rights without imposing external values is crucial for fostering trust. Acknowledging and respecting the diverse cultures and histories of African nations is essential. Europe should avoid a paternalistic approach and engage in cultural exchange initiatives that promote mutual understanding and appreciation. Collaborating with the African Union in addressing continental challenges and promoting regional integration can signal a commitment to working through established African institutions and frameworks. Europe should engage in open dialogue and consultation with African nations, actively seeking input, listening to concerns, and incorporating the perspectives of African leaders and communities in decision-making processes can build trust and strengthen alliances. It is crucial to demonstrate a long-term commitment to the well-being and development of African nations beyond short-term economic gains. Europe should invest in building enduring relationships based on shared values and goals. By adopting the right approaches, Europe can work towards establishing genuine and trusted alliances with Africa. It requires a shift from exploitative practices to a collaborative, respectful, and mutually beneficial partnership that aligns with the interests and aspirations of African nations. Was not accepting the alliance request a right decision for now? Being Cajuns is a good decision for now. By being cautious and not rushing into an alliance, African nations are taking a stance against potential exploitation and signaling a desire for equitable partnerships. This approach allows them to assess the sincerity of Europe's intentions, observe concrete actions towards fair collaboration, and negotiate terms prioritizing mutual benefit and respect for African sovereignty. Taking time before accepting the alliance request can allow African nations to assert their independence, strengthen their governance structures, and develop economic strategies prioritizing self-sufficiency. It reflects a commitment to learning from historical experiences and ensuring that any alliance is based on fairness, transparency, and genuine collaboration principles. Do you think Europe can ever stop exploiting Africa? What would it take to end this habit? Should Africa itself take the stand? Let us know in the comment section. If not, accepting the alliance request is the right decision. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.
Deposit Photos Music.